Learning through Synchronous Discussion. Welcome to this video on Learning through Synchronous Discussion. This is one of two videos on learning through discussion. The other video focuses on learning through asynchronous discussion. What you learn here will help you prepare for synchronous online discussions. This video will address the why of synchronous discussion, identify strategies for promoting learning through discussion, and discuss Zoom features and other collaborative tools that promote student engagement in discussion. Why synchronous discussion? Whether you teach a small class, large class, fully online course, hybrid or high flex course, or students across time zones, synchronous discussion offers a number of benefits for both you and your students. Synchronous discussions help create community among students through both informal or formal discussion, create an opportunity for all students to engage, help you check student understanding. However, without proper planning, discussions may lack the desired level of student engagement, include only superficial contributions or lack depth, flow in one direction, with responses going to the instructor instead of students responding to each other, or unintentionally exclude remote learners from full participation in hybrid or high-flex course discussions. To avoid these issues and ensure that students learn through discussion in your course, plan with the following 6 steps in mind. Promoting learning through synchronous discussion. Like any course activity or lecture, synchronous discussion requires some initial planning on the part of the instructor. To help promote learning, ahead of the actual discussion, you will want to articulate the goals and purpose of the discussion, communicate your expectations, set the tone for the discussion, determine your role, develop discussion prompts, and plan for feedback and implementation. Articulate the goals and purpose of the discussion. Help students understand the purpose and intended outcomes of the assigned discussion. Be explicit with how the discussion will contribute to students' learning. Communicate your expectations. Specify what you expect from students' contributions. Model what a substantive response might look like. Be sure to make it clear to students how often you expect them to participate and in what ways they can do so, whether by unmuting themselves on Zoom or contributing to the chat. If you intend to assess students' contributions to the discussion, share the criteria you will use to assess their participation. Discussion tip: guidelines for synchronous discussions. Establish discussion guidelines as a way to communicate expected behaviors and etiquette to students. Invite your students to revise, contribute to, or co-construct these guidelines. This will help encourage students' ownership of the guidelines. But there are some guidelines specific to a synchronous discussion. These might include asking students to use the raise hand feature in Zoom to participate, using the chat feature to pose questions, respond to peer questions, share ideas and examples, and keeping your microphones muted when not speaking. This is especially helpful in hybrid and high-flex course contexts to avoid in-person audio feedback within the classroom. Set the tone for discussion. It's important to set the tone and class norms for discussion early on. In your first week of synchronous class sessions, invite students to rename themselves under the Zoom participants list, including their names and pronouns they would like to be addressed with, and ask them to edit their profile picture for when their video is off. Put students in breakout rooms and ask them to introduce themselves to get them talking with each other early on. Discussion tip: break the ice. Icebreakers are another great way to get students actively engaging in discussion early in the semester. You might engage students in a synchronous meta-discussion about discussion, prompting them to consider what makes for effective discussions via Zoom. A multiple-choice Zoom poll, which lists out the characteristics of effective discussions, like the ones shown here, could provide a starting point for the discussion. Student responses could serve as fodder for discussion guidelines, and the activity itself will prime students for discussion expectations. Determine your presence. Make your role, and the role of your TAs, if applicable, explicit to students. Let students know what they can expect of your presence, reinforcement of the discussion guidelines, and receipt of feedback. Manage the discussion and intervene only when necessary. Actively guide the discussion to make it easy for students to do most of the talking and responding. Discussion tip: make the class feel small. Consider leveraging breakout rooms in Zoom to foster student connection and allow for more substantive or deeper conversations than a whole class discussion might. Discussion tip: give students time to think. It's important to give students time to think about the question being asked before responding. One common strategy is a think, pair, share, in which you first ask students to think about the question and how they might respond, possibly turning off their cameras and doing some reflective writing. Then, using breakout rooms, pair students to discuss their thoughts. Lastly, ask the pairs to share their discussion takeaways with the whole class. Develop discussion prompts. The questions you ask and how you ask them are important for leading an effective discussion. Draft open-ended questions that advance student learning and inspire a range of answers, and avoid closed-ended, vague, or leading questions. Vary question complexity over the course of a discussion. If there's one right answer, ask students about their process to get to that right answer. Discussion tip: ask students to take the lead. Asking students to generate discussion prompts is a great way to engage them in their learning. Invite students to pose open-ended or thought-provoking questions to launch discussion or connect to course material. You might also assign students specific roles and responsibilities during the discussion. This can be especially helpful in breakout rooms. Discussion tip: use collaborative docs to engage breakout rooms. When using breakout rooms for small group discussion, be clear with your expectations about what students should complete. Consider using a collaborative document, like a Google Doc or Google Slides. This will allow you to monitor groups' progress in the breakout rooms, or check in if you see groups facing challenges. This also helps students to both stay on track and curate notes to refer back to when sharing with the whole class. Plan for feedback and implementation. Be sure to save time for reflection and feedback. Reflect on your own perspective of how the discussion went, what worked, and what you might want to change. Collect feedback from your students, whether through a Google form, a Zoom poll, or informally during virtual office hours, and ask your students how the discussions are working and what they would like to see. Once you've had a chance to reflect and review student feedback, make a plan to implement some of the identified changes and share that plan with your students. Discussion tip: closing reflections. Create opportunities for your students to reflect on the discussion. You might consider asking them to not only reflect on what they learned from the discussion, but to also summarize key ideas or insights and pose new questions to prompt further discussion. Setting up Zoom for synchronous discussion. There are a number of features in Zoom that you will need to enable ahead of your first discussion. Some of these features include Zoom polls, breakout rooms, or the whiteboard feature. Discussion tip: survey student accessibility. It is important to communicate with your students about their access to various technologies. For example, if you want students to have their cameras on for an entire class session, ensure that your students aren't experiencing bandwidth issues or other barriers that might make camera use difficult. You can set up a survey using Google Forms or through Courseworks early in the semester to confirm students' ability to participate and meet class expectations. Discussion tip: encourage student engagement. Invite all students to participate, vary student voices, and prompt student engagement by providing multiple modes of contributing to the discussion. In Zoom, this might include asking students to use the raise hand feature to participate, encouraging students to use the chat feature to pose questions, ask for clarification, and respond to discussion prompts. Encourage students to use the Zoom reactions, such as the clapping hands or the thumbs up, or launch a Zoom poll to prompt reflection and spark discussion. For more information on learning through discussion, please visit the Center for Teaching and Learning's Learning Through Synchronous and Asynchronous Discussion resource page shown here. This concludes the video on learning through synchronous discussion. In this video, we have addressed the why of synchronous discussion, identified strategies for promoting learning through synchronous discussion, and explored Zoom features. For asynchronous discussion tips, watch the Learning Through Asynchronous Discussion video. For technical support using Zoom and other university support tools, contact CUIT. For teaching and learning support using Zoom and planning for discussions, contact the CTL.